Participants are here. 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 Download attendance.
That at the end. At how many participants now? Number?
Now
21.
21.
Hello. Hello.
Good morning, sir.
Good afternoon,
Good
sir.
afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Can you see the screen?
No, sir.
You're not seeing. 1 minute. Dr. Durga? They are not seeing a screen. They are not seeing the screen. Shall I go here? Okay, that is enough for me. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In this class, we are learning about antihistamines. Okay. Now, before going for antihistamines, let us learn briefly about histamine. Now, what is this histamine? It is a biogenic amine. Chemically, it is amine in nature, and it is seen in many tissues. That's why it is called histamine. Amine present in the tissues. Now, what are these mammalian tissues which are rich in histamine? They are namely lungs, skin, and intestine. They are rich, and some other tissues like nerves, nerve endings, and synaptic vessels also contain some amount of histamine. So since these tissues contain this amine, that's why it is called biogenic amine. and chemically this is histamine. Now naturally it is in inactive form. It is stored in the mast cells in the form of granules. So normally it is inactive, but once it is released by the rupture of the mast cells, when it's released, it is in an active stage. Now what makes that mast cells to burst or to release? These cells, they release in response to a physical injury or a chemical injury or to an injury caused by antigen antibody reaction. Now what is the role played by the histamine? Number one, it will regulate the gastric secretion. Number two, it provides body's protective mechanism at the site of injury, and it acts as a mediator in allergy and anaphylactic shock. So physiologically, it regulates gastric secretion, protects the body from the injury, then it mediates allergic reactions and anaphylactic reactions. Now this histamine is an endogenous substance synthesized from the amino acid histidine by the action of histidine decarboxylase. As I said, it is stored, and whenever there is an appropriate response, they are released. Now, for example, mast cells, which are abundant in skin, GI tract, and respiratory tract, they are stored. Again, basophils in the blood, inside that histamine is stored, and some neurons in the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system and the synaptic vesicles, they have this histamine. They are the stores. As I said, they are synthesized from L-histidine, levohistidine. By levohistidine, decarboxylase enzyme converts into histamine. When once it is released, as it is sensitized by triggering the stimulus, whether it is a chemical stimulus or a physical trauma, radiation trauma, whatever it may be, or antigen antibody. When once it is released, then it will have a short span of action. Afterwards, it will be metabolized. Metabolized by cytochrome P450 by two pathways. One pathway is methylation, the other pathway is oxidative deamination. This methylation, the histamine is methylated to N-methyl histamine. It is by N-methyl transferase, and to N-methyl imidazole acetic acid by MAO, monoamino oxidase enzymes. Ultimately, the product is eliminated. Metabolized product is eliminated in urine. That is one pathway called methylation. The other pathway is oxidative deamination with the help of diamino oxidase enzyme to imidazole acetic acid, then imidazole acetic acid riboside, and it is eliminated in the urine. Now this is the allergic response that we will understand later. Now what is the mechanism of action of histamine? Now histamine acts on two separate and distinct receptors. They are called histamine receptors, abbreviated as H. There are two, as I said, H1 and H2 receptor. H1 receptors they mediate contraction of the smooth muscles of bronchi and intestines, and the most of the depressor effect of the blood pressure. That means the vascular and non-vascular smooth muscles. Non-vascular smooth muscles, contraction of the bronchi and intestines. Vascular smooth muscles, relaxation causing blood reduction on blood pressure. That is about the H1 receptor. H2 receptors, it will mediate the action of histamine on the gastric secretion of the stomach, hydrochloric acid and pepsin. And also they participate in cardiac acceleration, H2 receptor. Let us see the distribution and function. H1 receptors, they are distributed in the smooth muscle, endothelium, and the nervous tissue. Smooth muscle, endothelium, and nervous tissue, peripheral and central nervous tissue. So non-vascular smooth muscles, smooth muscles of the bronchi and bronchioles, there is bronchoconstriction. Then endothelial cells, there is separation, vasodilatation, which causes increased vascular permeability. And in the nervous tissue, it causes pain and itching, and it causes allergic rhinitis, running nose, sneezing, etc. So all these actions, they are mediated to H1 receptors because they are present on the vascular smooth muscle, non-vascular smooth muscle. Then coming to H2 receptors, they are present on the gastric parietal cells and vascular smooth cells. So gastric parietal cells, they cause gastric acid secretion. Then vascular smooth muscles, they are involved in cardiac stimulation. How? Vasodilatation causing hypotension, which increases heart rate. The mechanism. There are now other receptors, H3 receptor, which is present in CNS and some peripheral tissue. Function, presynaptic feedback inhibition of histamine release. They are present on the nervous tissue, central and peripheral. Function, presynaptic feedback inhibition of histamine synthesis and release. H4 receptors, they are present in bone marrow and in a white blood cells. So what is their action? Chemotaxis, mast cell chemotaxis. That means attraction of the mast cells to the site of the formation of the substances of inflammation. Now, what is the pharmacological action of histamine on cardiovascular system? When the histamine is injected intravenously, orally and all, not that influence. When it is given intravenously, there is fall of blood pressure, then cutaneous flushing over the face and the upper trunk, rise in the skin temperature also, intense headache, and postural hypotension. These are the effects on intravenous histamine. Then when the same histamine is given subdermally, that is subcutaneously, it causes what is called as triple response of Willis. Triple response. So what are these triple? That means 3 responses. What are these responses? Number 1, at the site of injection, within few minutes, there will be a red spot. Within few seconds, It is due to direct vasodilatation effect. Vasodilatation, vascular smooth muscle relaxation causing vascular dilatation, and this is mediated through H1 receptor. Then after some time there is flare. That means it is spreading over 1 centimeter of the area, red spot few millimeters, whereas flare, this is spread over a slightly elevated surface at the spot of injection. Why this flare? It is due to axonal reflex and indirect vasodilatation. It is mainly because of accumulation of fluid, and as a result there is itching in that area. Histamine causes itching by sensitizing the nerve tissue, nerve endings. Again, this is mediated through H1 receptor. Then after 1 or 2 minutes, what will happen? There is a wheal. The same area in the original spot, there is increased edema, much more thickening edema due to increased capillary permeability. Again, this is mediated through H1 receptor. So these three responses, first, when you give the injection subcutaneously, within few seconds, there is a red spot extending for few millimeters, mainly because of direct influence on vascular dilatation. Then after some time, there is spread over to approximate 1 centimeter beyond the site of injection. There is slight elevated area. This is because of axonal reflex and indirect vasodilatation, and also there is itching. Then after few minutes, after 1 or 2 minutes, that is called wheal. In the same area, that is where there was a flare. There is much more edema, much elevated place due to increased capillary permeability. This is also mediated through H1 receptors. Now coming to smooth muscles of bronchioles. It causes contraction of non-vascular smooth muscle. Vascular smooth muscle, relaxation. Non-vascular smooth muscle, contraction. What will happen when there is bronchiolar constriction? They feel just like an asthma. Asthmatics may experience marked bronchoconstriction compared with the normal subjects, because there is already some compromise with the asthmatics. There is vasoconstriction. This will worsen the condition. So they feel more restriction for the air entry. So bronchial constriction, bronchiolar constriction, and intestinal hypermotility again is a non-vascular smooth muscle contraction, smooth muscle of the GI tract. So intestinal hypermotility. Coming to the reaction on exocrine glands, they are potent stimulators of gastric secretion. This is mediated through H2 receptors. So HCl and pepsin contents are increased. In addition, enhances salivary and lacrimal gland secretion. That is a very minimal unless large doses are given. So mainly the HCl, these gastric secretions are increased, that is HCl and pepsin, and salivary and lacrimal very minimal, or if the dose is severely increased, then you can see lacrimal and salivary secretion also. Then influence on peripheral nervous system, itching and pain. They cause itching and pain in the peripheral nervous system. Now histamine, as I said, it is inactive and it is stored in the mast cells, in the basophils, in the nerve vesicles. Now what are the substances which can stimulate histamine release? They may be chemical agents or physical agents. Chemical agents: chymotrypsin, atropine, morphine, tuberculin, toxins and venoms. The sting bite, scorpion bite, etc. Toxins, toxic substances. Then drugs like chymotrypsin, atropine, morphine, tuberculin. They all causes release of histamine from the stores. Physical agents: mechanical trauma, let us say a crush injury, or radiant energy, that is X-rays, deep X-rays, thermal energy, heat, etc. So all these physical agents can also trigger the release of histamine. Now after knowing histamine, so the salient features is histamine acts on two receptors, H1 and H2. H1 receptors, smooth muscles of bronchi, bronchioles, small intestine contraction, causing bronchoconstriction and gastrointestinal hypermotility. Then vascular smooth muscle causing relaxation, resulting in hypotension, edema. Then H2, mainly gastric acid secretion. Now, what are these antihistamines? Now, these are the compounds. They appear to prevent the binding of histamine to H1 receptors through their structural similarities. They try to prevent or reduce the influence of histamine on the tissues. That's why they are called antihistamines. How they prevent? Basically, they have structural similarity to the histamine. As a result, they bind to histamine receptors, particularly H1 receptors. Then the action of histamine can be antagonized. That's why we call them as antihistamines. Now, how they antagonize the actions? They antagonize it in three ways. Number one, by preventing or reducing histamine release. They prevent or reduce histamine release. Examples: glucocorticoids. How they prevent or reduce? Only when the mast cells burst open, they release the histamine, becomes active. So these glucocorticoids, they suppresses the tissue effects. How they suppresses? By suppressing the antigen antibody reaction. Antigen antibodies, they sensitize the mast cells to release the histamine. By suppressing this antigen antibody reaction, they prevent or reduce histamine release, glucocorticoids. Then by receptor antagonism, histamines, by structural similarity to the histamine, they occupy the binding sites for histamine and they will not allow the histamine to bind and cause the actions. Number three, by using physiological antagonist. What is here on the smooth muscles, vascular smooth muscle? There is vasodilatation. That's why it is causing hypotension. Adrenaline, it acts as a physiological antagonist because it causes vasoconstriction. It opposes physiologically the action of histamine. So in these three ways, you can prevent or antagonize, oppose the actions of histamine by suppressing antigen antibody reaction, by blocking the histamine receptors, that is called receptor antagonism, or physiological antagonists like adrenaline. Now coming to the histamines, that means the drugs which can block the histamine 1 receptor competitively by their physiological, that is structural similarity. Now these histamines, they are called conventional antihistamines. Conventional, because H2 receptors, they were identified only during 1960s, 65, 66. During that time, they came to know H2 receptor. Till that time, they knew only about H1 receptors. That's why they are called antihistamines. So the conventional antihistamines, they are called first generation antihistamines. They are H1 blockers identified for the first time since beginning. Before you go here, before the invention of the newer drugs, newer antihistamines, these drugs, they are called first generation or conventional antihistamines. They are H1 blockers. First generation, since these first generation drugs, they were penetrating the blood-brain barrier, entering into the nervous system. And on the nervous system, they have got a sedative effect. Based on the severity of the sedation they causes, they are classified as highly sedative, moderately sedative, and mild sedative. So the first generation or conventional antihistamines, they are classified depending upon their sedative property as mild, moderate, and severe. Severe sedative or highly sedative, diphenhydramine, dimenhydrinate, and hydroxyzine. Moderately sedative, phenyramine, maleate, meclizine, biclizine. Mild sedative, chlorphenyramine maleate, cyclizine, clemastine. Second generation. What is the peculiar generation? They cannot penetrate the blood-brain barrier. They don't cause drowsiness or sedation. So second generation, they are also called non-sedating antihistamines. Example, cetirizine, fexofenadine, loratadine, levocetirizine. So antihistamines, they are classified broadly. Once we say antihistamines, they are H1 receptor blockers. We don't call them H2 receptor blockers as antihistamines. We call them as H2 blockers, histamine 2 blockers. So these antihistamines, conventionally, they are classified as first generation, second generation. First generation, they are further classified as mild, moderate, and severe sedatives. Now coming to their mechanism of action. As I said, they have got structural similarity to that of histamine. So they act as competitive antagonist to H1 receptor. Competitive antagonist to H1 receptor. Similarly, as I said, they are divided into, since there are two receptors, H1 and H2, so H1 receptor antagonist and H2 receptor antagonist. Once we say antihistamines, it is pertaining to H1 receptor antagonist. Now, what is the mechanism? They block the actions of histamine receptors. They compete with the histamine for the binding to the receptors. And sometimes they displaces the histamine from the receptor. So by doing so, they block the actions of histamine. They block, they compete, they displaces the histamine. Now, what is the pharmacological action of these antihistamines? That is H1 blockers. As I said, the first generation, they have got more action on central nervous system because they passes through the blood-brain barrier, enters the central nervous system. So they produce sedation. That's why we classify them as highly sedating, moderate sedating, and mild sedating. So they produce sedation, drowsiness. Then number 2, they suppresses nausea and vomiting resulting from labyrinthine disturbances without producing sedation. Now, for example, a motion sickness. When a few person, when they're traveling by road or train or air, they get vomiting because there is labyrinthine disturbance, and that is called motion sickness. They suppresses that motion sickness. Then coming to the reaction peripheral nervous system, they have anticholinergic property, whereas second generation they don't have anticholinergic property. First generation they have anticholinergic property. As a result, they cause retention of urine, constipation, and blurring of vision, then dryness of the mouth, etc. etc. in high doses. They have potent anticholinergic activity. They have local anesthetic action also, very mild local anesthetic activity they have. Then they have antagonistic histamine property. They effectively block histamine-induced bronchoconstriction, contraction of intestinal and other smooth muscles, and also triple response. What all the actions of histamine on H1 receptors, they are blocked by antihistamines. Next, anti-allergic, the manifestations of immediate type of hypersensitivity, they are suppressed. That is type 1 reaction. So urticaria, itching are well controlled. That is peripheral nervous tissue, itching, urticaria, rashes, they are controlled, anti-allergic. Now coming to the pharmacokinetic properties, the classical antihistamines, H1 antihistamines, they are well absorbed orally and also parenterally. Action is manifested within 30 minutes. Onset of action is quick. They are metabolized in liver and excreted from the urine. They are widely distributed in the body and enters the brain. That's what you have seen. It enters the brain, the first generation. The newer compounds, second generation, their entry into the brain is very poor. Their duration of action is 4 to 6 hours, except meclizine, loratadine, cetirizine, fexofenadine, which acts for 12 to 24 hours. So all other antihistamines, their action is just 4 to 6 hours, except meclizine, loratadine, cetirizine, fexofenadine. So meclizine is first generation, loratadine, cetirizine, and fexofenadine, they are second generations. Their action is for 12 to 24 hours. Now, what are the uses? Hypersensitivity states, wherever you get the allergic symptoms, because allergy is nothing but the antigen-antibody formation resulting in histamine release. In all these allergic states, symptomatically antihistamines will release or give the relief from hypersensitive states. Allergic rhinitis, that is running nose because of allergy, sneezing, itching, eye and nasal mucosa, itching of eyes and also nasal mucosa, what is called allergic rhinitis. It gives relief for them. Then they are also used in the management of acute and chronic urticaria, rashes all over the body or face or any part of the body. It may be acute or chronic. That means sudden onset or delayed onset urticaria. or contact dermatitis. When skin come in contact with certain allergens or chemical substances, it causes dryness of the skin, itching, etc. That is called contact dermatitis. Then edema of insect bite, as I said, sting bite, honeybee bite, scorpion bite, etc. Edema is formed to prevent that itching. Allergic conjunctivitis, the reddening of the conjunctiva and lacrimation, etc. So antihistamines. Then Parkinsonism. In Parkinsonism, there is excessive salivation. You know, first generation of antihistamines, they causes anticholinergic effect, dryness of the mouth. So in Parkinsonism, there is excessive salivation to control that. Antihistamines of first generation they are used. Then prevention of motion sickness. So before you start journey, those people they have got the habit of getting vomiting during their journey. So just half an hour before the journey, they have to take one antihistamine of first generation. Then they will not get the motion sickness. Then nausea and vomiting following the radiation exposure. Whenever there is deep X-ray for cancer chemotherapy, they are exposed for X-ray for longer period of time with higher concentration. They may get nausea and vomiting. To prevent that, antihistamines are used. And for pre-operative medication, that means before the patient is undergoing surgery, it is also called pre-anesthetic medication. They give antihistamines. Why? Because this first generation they have got sedative effect. They calms the mind of the person. The person who is undergoing surgery, he is having anxiety. So to relieve that anxiety, to induce sleep, when the person is sleeping, then the requirement of general anesthetic agent is also reduced. So that's why it is called pre-anesthetic medication. Before the administration of anesthesia, they give antihistamines. Now, what are the adverse effects? Adverse effects, particularly H1 generation. As I said, sedation, dizziness, fatigue. Very rarely, they themselves may cause allergic reaction, particularly when they are applied locally. Now, because of this, they are not advised for a person who is driving the motor vehicle, a taxi driver, a auto driver, or a bus driver. Whoever drives the vehicles, they should not be given first generation antihistamines because they cause sedation, and as a result it may result in accident. Similarly, a person working in as a mechanic in any industry is working along with certain engines. Again, they should not be administered. Then tachycardia, dryness of mouth, blurring vision, urine retention, constipation. All these they are because of anticholinergic effect. So first generation they have got anticholinergic property. They can cause constipation, urine retention, blurring of vision, dry mouth, and sometimes tachycardia. Now coming to second generation drugs, in what way they are differing? As I said, second generation, they are called non-sedating antihistamines because they cannot enter the brain, they cannot pass through the blood-brain barrier, so they will not produce sedation. They are also called daytime antihistaminics. The examples, fexofenadine, then loratadine, cetirizine, etc. So fexofenadine, it is an active metabolite for terfenadine. Terfenadine was the first among the second generation antihistaminics. But terfenadine is not used because of its adverse effects. But its metabolite, fexofenadine, it is active. It is as good as an active antihistaminics of second generation. As I said, second generation does not cross the blood-brain barrier. So they will not produce sedation or they may impair psychomotor performance. And they are also free from atropinic side effect. That means they don't have anticholinergic side effects. They don't cause dryness of mouth, constipation, retention of urine, etc. So that is the difference between the first generation and second generation. They are also rapidly absorbed, excreted in urine in unchanged form, urine and in bile. Plasma of life 11 to 16 hours. Duration of action 24 hours. What are the uses? Allergic rhinitis 120 milligrams once a day because their plasma of life is 11 to 16 hours. Their duration of action is 24 hours. Once a day is enough. That is allergic rhinitis 120 milligrams once a day. For urticaria and other skin allergies 180 milligrams once a day. Loratadine is a long-acting selective peripheral H1 antagonist. It lacks CNS depressants and it also acts fast. Plasma of life is 17 hours. Cetirizine, yes, H1 receptor affinity is more, very poorly penetrates the brain. It inhibits release of histamine, not only blocks, it also prevents the release of histamine. Uses upper respiratory allergy, that is rhinitis, running nose, irritation, sneezing, then pollinosis. Pollen grains, they act as allergens. So they cause allergic conjunctivitis, allergic rhinitis, that is pollinosis. Urticaria of unknown origin, itching, rashes, then atopic dermatitis. Cetirizine is the drug used. Now, what are the adverse effects of second generation? First generation mainly pertaining to sedation, etc. Then anticholinergic properties. Second generation, they have got much lower incidence of adverse effects than the first generation. Cetirizine appears to have more CNS actions because cetirizine, it poorly penetrates the central nervous system. That's why sometimes it will have sedative property. But fexofenadine, loratadine, they don't have sedation. And because of this, cetirizine cannot be used by pilots because they are controlling the plane and it will interfere in the judgment because of mild sedation. Now these antihistamines, they interfere with many drugs, drug interaction. Whenever you are giving more than one drug, and if that another drug is an antihistamine, you should be very careful. Why? Because there is drug interaction. Now antihistamines, particularly first generation, they are sedatives. Then if you are giving CNS depressants like barbiturates, opiates, general anesthetics and alcohol, all these drugs, they suppresses the central nervous system and they cause sedation, sleep, etc. So antihistamines, they potentiate the action. They potentiate whatever the action of barbiturates, opioids, general anesthetics and alcohol, it is magnified. They potentiate the actions of CNS depressants. Then the first generation, they possess anticholinergic action. So when you are giving anticholinergic drugs, for example, atropine, they cause severe dry mouth, constipation, blurring of vision, etc. So you should avoid along with anticholinergics. Then particularly terfenadine. That's why, as I said, it is not advocated. When it is taken along with the grape juice or drug like erythromycin or other drugs, it will inhibit the enzyme cytochrome P3A4 and lead to cardiac toxicity. So because of that, terfenadine is withdrawn from the market. Now that's all about H1. Now coming to H2 antagonist, histamine 2 receptor antagonist like cimetidine, ranitidine, famotidine, mediate the gastric acid secretion. To block that, they are used cimetidine, ranitidine, famotidine, and nizatidine. Now, these drugs, they are competitive antagonists to H2 receptors. What they will do? They will inhibit the secretory functions of gastric mucosa. By inhibiting, what they will do? They reduce the gastric acid volume and also they reduce the concentration of pepsin. That is their main action. Now, where these drugs are used? These drugs are used wherever there is diseases related to high secretion of hydrochloric acid. What is called as acid pepsin disease. APD, acid pepsin disease. High concentration of hydrochloric acid and pepsin. So what are these acid pepsin diseases? Ulcers. Ulcers in the duodenum, what is called as duodenal ulcer. Ulcer in the stomach called gastric ulcer. Then Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. What is this? There is a pathological hypersecretory state resulting in excessive gastric pepsin and hydrochloric acid. There is a pathological hypersecretory state that is called Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. There also they are used. Then another disease called GERD. What is that? Gastroesophageal reflux disease. Usually the sphincter at the junction of the esophagus and the stomach, if it is patent, the hydrochloric acid will be refluxed above and there will be ulcers or burning sensation because of the esophagus is exposed by the hydrochloric acid. That is called GERD or gastroesophageal reflux disease, or it can continue as reflux esophagitis, inflammation of esophagus. So all these symptoms, they are because of increased acid pepsin and hydrochloric acid. They're called acid pepsin diseases. In all these diseases, H2 antagonist, ranitidine, cimetidine, etc., they are the drugs. Now, what are the adverse effects of H2? They are not very common. They are seen only in 1 or 2% of the patients. These are most common. That means very minor, like diarrhea, dizziness, headache, rashes. Sometimes constipation and vomiting. Very bizarre, mild, but they are very common. Then other effects, CNS effects, slurred speech, delirium, confusion. Particularly, these things, they are very common in older patients or the patients who has liver or kidney impairment. Then third important is endocrine function. This is minor, but it can also be reversed. If you stop the drug, it will disappear. What is that? Anti-androgen effect. Particularly in males, loss of libido, impotence. So that's all about the antihistamines. Any doubts?
So what is the route of administration?
No, majority of them they are given orally, and few of them, depending upon the emergency situation, they can be given parenterally. They can be given orally. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Any other doubts? No doubts? Okay.